I just catch
Welcome.
the introduction.
You like that? You like the welcome back to Tech Charged, Turn Down for What podcast live. It's Thursday night. We are here once again with Martin Meek. Thanks for joining, Mr. Martin. We're missing Chase tonight, but he'll be back next week. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah, Jace is taking the night off. He's like being lazy this week, you know?
It's good for him, though, man. He's getting some vacation time. He's getting to try out some of what we're going to talk about tonight. We should have probably done this topic before he went on his trip because we're talking about route planning. So that's kind of good timing when we get to hear back from him. I've got a big trip coming up later this year in April. So it's a topic we've wanted to talk about. And then Jace is on his now. So it'll be interesting to hear his feedback when he gets back on how his went.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear because I know he's planning on trying to use a better route planner, which we're going to go over a little bit tonight. And it's got its pros and cons. I really think we're gonna see a little bit of that tonight, and then see what we get into with the factory forward navigation as well.
Yeah, I've tried a little bit of everything and had different thoughts on each. So I used to be an Android Auto user and used that quite a bit with Google Maps, and then switched over for different family reasons to the iPhone. And of course, as soon as I did that, Google Maps came up with an awesome update that we'll talk about later. So I've done the Apple Maps, and then I've done the native navigation, which has its pros and cons, like you said. And then I did try better route planner through the Benai's box that you recommended on a trip, and that had its own unique things that worked well and didn't work well. So each one is kind of a different beast. Each one also, I think, illustrates for me like where Tesla gets it right so often, because everything we're going to talk about, Tesla does the best of what every single one of them do without, I don't think, any of the worst. You've got a Tesla now that you've been playing around with.
I do.
Is there any deficiencies you've seen in the Tesla navigation?
Yes, there is. I mean, first of all, it won't route you to a CCS charger. So if you're in an area where there's not a Tesla, you can't do that. And that's even on the new ones, that, to my knowledge. So, but I have a 14 Tesla. So I've used it a little bit, route planned. It does its thing. You can push the button and tell it where to go. There's just no question about how it's going to work. The problem that I'm seeing with the Tesla system, at least the older systems, the new ones might be better. There's not really a route planning capability. So if you're in, Chicago, and you're going to run down to Knoxville, Tennessee, and then over to South Carolina, you can't punch in individual stops. And as it gets to those, continue to go like you can with Google Maps or the factory forward navigation. So
interesting.
That's on the older system. I don't know if the newer Tesla system's that way or not.
I mean, I think with Tesla, and those in our audience chime in, drop a comment. You guys that are way more familiar with the Tesla models and route planning, there's a lot of people that do a lot of road trips with them. Let us know, what you think. But I'm pretty sure that all the Teslas are the same when it comes to that it's not like Ford where the 22s and 23 have a certain thing and the 24s have a certain thing and the 25s have a certain thing. Like Tesla kind of updates universally, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but
I think you're right, Chris. And one of the things I noticed, so we just finished up, we were going to talk about what we've been doing the last week, but we just finished up at Martin Rebuilds, the 14 Tesla that we were working on, and wanted to do a range test with it back and forth to Tulsa. I didn't get any of that on video. We're just playing with it for this point. But, Tulsa for us is like an hour away, 70, 75 miles to the charger. And so I wanted to know, down and back, and it will, if you put in the destination, say I want to go to the Tesla supercharger in Tulsa, it will give you right below your destination percentage arrival what your round trip is, which is kind of neat. But let's say I'm not going to the Tesla supercharger. I'm going to a Cheesecake Factory or Texas Roadhouse first, and then I want to go to the supercharger. I can't tell it to go here, then there. So that was a little bit frustrating, even from the Tesla side, to not be able to identify the stops that I want to make. You just pretty much have to do it. And if you can't get to the stop you want to go to, it'll route you to a supercharger.
Yeah. Josh chiming in. He doesn't trust any route planner. I get that way sometimes.
Well, that's a whole nother side of this, Josh. I mean, that route planning is one thing. Planning to a site that'll work is another thing.
Yeah. I definitely have trust issues. We were talking earlier, you mentioned about, EA, and I had set mine to kind of block EA, and you're like, you're used to a part of the country where you can't do that. And, my travel is going to take me out to parts of Arizona later this year where it turns out I can't only use Tesla. I'm going to have to use a non-Tesla at one point as I'm heading to the Grand Canyon, just because of where I'm coming from. And,
Chris, have you charged EA in the last 6 months or a year?
No, I've been so badly burned by them. In the last year, yes, because I did take the VinFast my VinFast video where I took the VF9 and they gave it to me for a day. I drove up to San Francisco and I plugged into their flagship up there, which was absolutely beautiful. It was indoors. They had they had 2 like meeting rooms. All the chargers were the 350s. They all worked. It was truly an awesome experience. If every EA experience was like the one that I had with the VinFast, that would be a different story. But prior to that, I literally, I am not joking. Like, this isn't an exaggeration. Prior to that, I had never been to an EA stop where I didn't have at least one problem of some sort, and oftentimes multiple problems. The worst of it being where I saw this poor Volvo driver where the charger got stuck in his car and it wouldn't release it. And then, we got on the phone with them. We were trying every trick we could find on Reddit, and their advice was to have it towed. And I'm like, ma'am, how do you suppose we do that? It's attached to your charger. It was quite a night, and it was this poor guy with his family. And yeah, at one time it thought my name was, it said like, welcome Jose EV6. And I'm like, my name's not Jose. I don't know any EV6. I don't want to charge this poor guy Jose, so I discontinued that one. Yeah, I've had all kinds of problems.
And we should probably start there. For those that don't know, EA, Electrify America, which was started by Volkswagen. So if you buy a Volkswagen, and I think even today, you get 3 years of free charging if you buy a Volkswagen at the Electrify America station. So
I feel like they pulled back from that.
Yeah, they may have now, but for a long time, you pull into an EA, there's going to be a Volkswagen there charging, and it says right on the screen, 0 cost. I did that a couple weekends ago in Wichita, Kansas. There was 2 Volkswagens there charging because it's free for those guys for 3 years.
Yeah, and when you bring up Volkswagen, so the very first time I ever used an EA station, a DC fast charger, I was coming back from Sacramento, and I can make it usually from the Bay Area to Sacramento and back, but in this case, I had 2 coworkers, one in Modesto that I had to drop off. And then we also went to lunch together. So just the added trip of going to lunch together and then driving a little bit to the side to Modesto made it so that I couldn't get back home. My other friend was in Castro Valley, closer to my house that I was dropping off, and we couldn't make it there. So I stop at this EA station that's next to a DoubleTree hotel. There's only 4 chargers, which is not unusual for EA.
Yeah.
And we pull up and there's 4 Volkswagen, or the ID4s. Is that the big one?
Let me guess. Charging to 100%.
Charging to 100%. And two of them, and it was, there's a Volkswagen dealer nearby, so you can tell this is like where the locals are going for their free charging. 2 of them this was their regular day to go and do this, apparently, and they knew each other. And so they did this together, and they had literally had a picnic set up as a family. I mean, I'm talking a table, like a little, like blanket, the whole thing, man. They were fully decked out.
Which for just reinforcing we need some stuff to do at these chargers, right?
Yeah, it was nuts, man. And so I wait and I go to plug in and I get like the red ring of death. Like, it just doesn't want to charge for me. And so I pull back out, wait for another one. I plug into another one, same problem. It doesn't work. Then I'm like, well, crap. So I search for EVgo. There's an EVgo at a Safeway, 15 minutes down the road. I can make it. I make it there with like 1% battery left. Go to use the EVgo. It also fails. I had to call and have them reset it. The plug-in charge just wouldn't work. And so I finally had to use my credit card.
Work for me most of the time.
So yeah, it was just a hot mess. Finally, thank God. And then the charge was an incredible cost. I can't remember what it was. So I only plugged in for like 5 minutes, just enough to get, that enough to get me home.
When you get costing, it's like Tesla, EA, EVgo, charge point will fall in there somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
EVgo, there's a charger in Joplin, Missouri, and Missouri's cheap, 70 cents a kilowatt hour.
That's just nuts. And that's not unusual. Pilot Flying J does this, and a bunch of others do this. And
That's what it is. The Ultium stops. And I'm like, you guys, I sent a message to him, said, look, if you want customers to use your site, you're going to have to get in line with what's right across the street. And there's a 45-cent a kilowatt hour charger across the street at a Road Ranger.
Yeah, it's nuts to me, these things. And but Chris, you had before.
Tell us what you've been up to. Like, I'm curious, since last week, I know a lot's happened, and you first of all, you got to drive the Tesla. We want to get into that because that sounds really cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I got to drive the new refresh Model Y, and I got to do it at the Tesla factory itself. So that was a lot of fun. I've got a video up on my YouTube channel for that. It's got a lot of views. It's got 15,000 views. So,
it's a new latest greatest thing. Tell me, I watched the video myself, so I was watching you, obviously filmed in Mexico. I mean, for sure, but this,
the one section where I used,
you were in Mexico.
I was in Mexico
down there right quick.
That one acceleration test was definitely in Mexico.
So I'm curious, your takeaway, like, give me top 3, what's better and what's worse.
So coming from I'm not really a performance guy. I mean, I'm a middle-aged family guy, so I'm not screaming. The one section in Mexico aside, I'm not usually screaming demon down the street at any kind of crazy rates. I'm using it for normal family stuff. So what I really appreciated was being able to see the back area of it, the space. And so as we look behind it, you can see this has power folding seats. And so
which could be good or bad, something to go wrong or not.
More parts could be more problems, more parts, more problems. I think that's the rap song. Maybe not. More money. Yeah. But it's got tremendous, look at that space, man. That is tremendous space in the Model Y. It's got a sub trunk that's deep.
Tesla's kind of known for that. If you even in the Model S, the old one, you could sleep back in that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you easily could car camp in this thing, and it's got that middle pass through that you can open up just the middle spot.
Oh, I think you mentioned that. You'd like to talk about that because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I missed pointing that out on the video, and I was like, it's always like, oh man, regret. I love the white interior; it looks stellar. It's got the screen back there like the updated Model 3 does. So the kids can watch YouTube or Netflix. It'll link
kind of cool for the kids if you're got a road trip. Tell me a little bit. One thing that I've noticed about Teslas in general, Model 3, Model Y, compared to the Lightning or the Silverado, is it's loud. So talk a little bit about the MBH of this new model.
Yeah, it much improved. I think you can see there the front seat sliding back. The definite difference, and it's tough because if you're coming from a gas car, of course, every EV sounds quiet.
Yeah.
And if you're coming from a Lightning or a BMW i7 or a Audi e-tron, even other EVs still sound loud. So it's one of those things where it's better than any Tesla other than the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck does a really good job with it. Okay. And now the updated Model 3 does as well, I should say.
And now compare those to the Lightning. Like if you look at the Lightning, because we know the Lightning is that's one of its features is it's so quiet. Has it made it to Lightning low dB levels yet or not?
No, definitely not. It is definitely a little bit louder than the Lightning for a couple different reasons, I think. So the Lightning does a really good job of sound deadening in general. And the motors, you don't hear the motors right alone there. I mean, Lucid, Rivian, Tesla, when you hit the accelerator, you're going to hear the motors in all of those. And some people like that. Some people want to. This is a really cool feature, by the way, on the Y. You see how you can push it forward or you can recline it back.
Yeah. So reclining rear seats is a game changer for their passengers.
Yeah. Most of the time, that's not something that is ever been that I've seen outside of China. I haven't seen that.
No, I've had people complain not about the Lightning, but our old 18 and 19 F-150s, how the back seats stood up too far. They needed to recline them a little bit. I know the Dodge Ram Mega Cab will slide forward and you can lay that seat back and really get it comfortable.
Okay. So I thought that was a cool feature as well. But yeah, as far as the sound, the Lightning, you've got the motor is all the way in the front of the truck, 5 feet ahead of you. And then the one in the rear motor is, a good 7-8 feet behind you. Right. So I think there's a lot of advantages, just the way it's structurally made, where it's going to deaden that and the motors don't make as much noise. And so it's still The one I was driving to had the lower profile wheels on it, and so that's going to get a little bit more road noise than the big thick side walls of the Lightning. So that again is going to be an advantage. But having been in a buddy of mine, Thaddeus's Model Y many times, and been in my sister's Model X many times, it is way better than those were.
I've heard. Have you been in a newer or even an older Mach-E? Can you compare it to that?
No, I have not been in. I have been in the Mach-E, but I think the Mach-E is still better. And again, I think it's because those motors.
Ours is super, super quiet too. It is way quieter in it than that Model S. Now, keep in mind, the Model S is like a 14, so that their NVH is just a lot. The road noise is a lot, wind noise, and in times, the Mach-E just doesn't have that, which is interesting because Ford has. That's what everybody says. Tesla's a software company, and then they started building cars, and Ford's the other way around. And you can definitely feel that in both aspects when you get in those two cars. So that's why I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Did you notice anything in software? I mean, you said I know you got to play with full self-drive.
Yeah, I did the full self-driving, which was absolutely phenomenal. I was really, really impressed with it, more impressed than I thought I would be. And so at the end of the video, I go do a full self-drive from where I ended up back to the Tesla factory. And it did a couple of impressive things where it had to make choices with lanes that were going to be ending. It wasn't a super tough FSD drive for it because there was very little traffic on a Saturday, but I'm gonna try to get another Tesla. I was at an event for Tesla Owners Club, San Joaquin Valley, and I won like a Tesla for a day. Like they'll let me take a Tesla for 24 hours, and I'm gonna get one and let my wife experience FSD, and I'm gonna do a more challenging video when I get to use that. Some other little software changes. It's got the ambient light that you can change the ambient light like you can in the 3. There's also one of the big, I think it's a niche change, but on the fan, you can separate the airflow between the passenger and the driver and give it like an oscillation. So it can oscillate facing me, and it can oscillate.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So really what I'm hearing you say is you would like to have your Lightning with the Tesla software and full self-drive.
Yeah. I think that would be the ultimate.
I don't want to be an anti-Forder here because I'm all about it. Why not a Cybertruck? Is it just cost? Is that what stops you?
The big one was cost. You can't get one for. I mean, now it's 72, I guess, instead of 80,000, which is where it was. But availability. It wasn't available for years after I got my Lightning. Having now driven both and been in both, the Cybertruck has amazing software. It's got the Air Ride that you can adjust. That's all great stuff. It has aftermarket running boards. Originally, you didn't have running boards. Now you can get aftermarket ones. So that's one check that's improved. The back seat is substantially less. So when it comes to the room, the width of the back seat, the leg room, it's far
not a big deal.
Not a big deal at all. Even for adults, you can still fit 3 across, but it's not as big as the Lightning. The Lightning's a little bit wider, a little bit deeper. And so I just like that extra space. As far as the aftermarket accessories, everything Tesla is expensive. So, really? One of the other things that I got to do this week was I was able to get a new tonneau cover. I work with a company called WorkSport that I really like. They are located out of New York. They do all their manufacturing out of New York. And before, the WorkSport cover would only go 2/3 of the way open. The last panel wouldn't lift up. And now in this new one, it will take in that last panel, kind of like the backflip or some others.
So your AL3, is that right?
Yeah.
You couldn't fold it up against the cab like that.
I couldn't do that. And so what I loved about the AL3 is I could take it off in like 2 minutes. And so that's what I did for all my videos. When I was going to the movies or whatever, I would take it off, and it was easy to take off and on. This is the first time.
Isn't this one going to be more competition to like a backflip then, or something along those lines?
Yeah. This is the number one thing people were asking about was, hey, can it go all the way up? And the answer was no. Now it can. And
but
so
it blocks your view.
yeah, it does block your view. That's not helpful. But
of course, if you're hauling something that's higher than the tonneau cover anyway, your view's probably blocked anyway.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I was hauling a crate today for a big commercial air conditioner. I posted that on X and on Facebook.
I saw that. That looked like it was, no view anyway, so that you didn't have to take this off to do it.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. It fit right in the bed exactly where I needed it to fit. So that was really cool. But aftermarket accessories like these are super available from multiple vendors, and they fit. If you can just find one for any F-150, you're going to find one for the Lightning. And so there's so many aftermarket accessories that are affordable. They're not specialty. They're not incredibly expensive. And so when it comes to all of that, and then, the frunk for me is just way, way better, right?
Yeah, no, that is, I agree with you there. I was just going to say number one selling truck in America. It's going to have all that aftermarket stuff. But I personally don't want a E-Rev because I don't want to lose the frunk. That is probably one of my biggest things.
Well, it's interesting because Scout has their E-Rev, and they have
we have one on order.
Yeah, you don't lose the frunk with that. This is just a couple shots of earlier today of this is something I would have had to remove the tonneau cover on the AL3, and now I could just fold it up, and it was like a perfect fit. So that was just super cool. That like already I'm putting it to use. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, it's all those aftermarket accessories for the Lightning that you can get that are super easy and available. That's an advantage of the frunk. Having the power up there, all the extra space up there. I use it all the time. Again, just from a practical standpoint, plug it in, work tools, if I'm going to go somewhere and I need to recharge the batteries, all of that stuff in the front, having it available is super cool. So those are the advantages to me for the Lightning over the Cybertruck, but the user software, for sure is a disadvantage, I think, for Ford. And I don't
know that it's, not want to say it's bad, but it could be improved. And as a non-software based company who doesn't have a lot of the native stuff that they're doing, like the navigation, that's really actually a Garmin backed product.
It is.
And, I remember back in the day, Garmin had good, you had a TomTom or Garmin or some of those for the windshield navigations. They were pretty good, but it seems like they haven't advanced, when you start looking. Now, I will say, I like the factory navigation. If it had the Tesla stops in it and a couple of changes, I personally would use it almost all the time. There's a few things that it needs to do better. And I know we're going to get into this. I want to kind of go over a couple things tonight that would happen in our week, but I know we're going to get into Google EV routing because if you're really comparing navigation systems right now, you're comparing either CarPlay or Android Auto, which means Apple or Google, to the Ford navigation. There's not a lot there's some guys who run a better route planner, but I don't think it's commonplace. It's not the most used one. And that's what we want to get into those a little bit. And I've got a couple of videos to share that I put together on both of those. But anyhow, I think we lost you there, Chris. Your mic went on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself there.
It's like a Teams meeting.
Yeah, it's when the kids are running around, I didn't want them, so I kind of mute that between.
Oh yeah.
The TomToms and the Garmins of the world were great when it was navigation, and their big difference is that any of the systems we're going to talk about tonight, they all navigate relatively well.
Right.
And there's a big difference between navigation and route planning when it comes to EVs, because gas stations are so ubiquitous, it doesn't even have to think about them.
And that's why a lot of people say road trip in the Lightning is a pain in the butt.
Yep.
It's the route planning side, and then you have to charge. So you're worrying about getting there. You're worrying about where am I going to stop? Did the truck? Can I trust? Like Josh mentioned earlier, can I trust the route planner? Will it take me without? And the answer is no. You have to do some manual calculations on your own, and that's one of the things that really frustrates me. Our title tonight, the frustrating part is you can't trust it. Yeah. So I'm hoping, Ford team, Mr. Farley, if you guys are listening, I hope T3 follows through on that trust the truck, phrase, because we can't trust it. If you trust the Lightning GOM, the Guessometer, you're gonna get burned.
Yeah, we'll kind of go through all of those things, but that's where the big difference is, right? Is that the Garmins of the world are really good at navigating. Those are navigation companies, and what they haven't done is pivoted to route planning, and that market being still only 10% or so of the U.S. market, they just haven't embraced it, and there's not a lot of urgency for them. They're more concerned with the the broader market still, which is easier because you're not route planning, you're just navigating.
Yeah, I mean, they have this much market to deal with, and right over here in the corner is route planning. Whereas Tesla, that is an integral part of that car. It has to be there.
Yeah, and with Tesla's purpose built for that purpose, and Tesla is the lion's share of route planning, just mathematically, right? They have so much of the market that not only are EV route planning a niche of navigation, it's a niche within a niche, because Tesla's not using Android Auto or Apple or any of those navigations or third parties. They're using their own. So, the niche within a niche within a niche is such a small piece. So for Apple and Android, they don't have a lot of motivation. I mean, they're going to get there. They know it's a market they need to support. You kind of eventually get updates and get better and better over time, but these updates come, sparingly and way too slow. I mean, we've had Tesla navigation for the Ford coming up literally a year now. Very soon, it's going to hit the 1 year anniversary of having Tesla access, and nobody has it right now. I mean, we'll talk about a couple that are close and some that are coming, but nobody's got the full package yet. And that said, Ford has come a long way, man. And I know we talked earlier this week about an old Ford EV that you came across that didn't have any of the, the stuff we have today.
Of course, it didn't have enough range to be able to travel. Right. But yeah, I'll share a little. This is what I came across, and if some of you guys have seen this before, but this is really close to my house. It's over in Arkansas, like an hour and a half away, and I'm sitting here with drool out the side of my mouth because this is where it started for Ford. Yeah. This is a 2000 Ford Ranger electric. So it has a battery underneath that looks very, very similar to the Lightning battery. I don't know if there's a picture, if it shows underneath the side of this truck, but here's what kind of the rear motor looks kind of similar, other than this bar going across here. They did do a leaf spring suspension. But then under the hood, you have all of the typical, of course, this guy's showing everything. Here's under the hood. You got all your typical inverters and stuff, kind of where the engine would be. So it still kind of looks like an engine if you don't know what engines look like. But no, this is your inverters and stuff. But under the truck, of course, this guy's converted it to a J1772. They had their own special connector back in the day,
which is so cool. Like, this makes it so cool. Like, I'm so jealous, man. Like, I would love to have this as just a fun show up to EV event driver. Put a wrap on
I wanted to show something if it'll show the zoomed in part here good enough. I don't know if it will, but if you can see, it says distance to empty, and there's a gauge that looks like the rest of the gauges. It just climbs up and shows you how many miles you have. I mean, that's just old school cool. Yeah, I say old school. 2000 is really not that old, but yeah.
If I could win the lottery and just have some F around money, I would be like, dude, build this for me, build it out. I think you should get it if you can.
4,000 for this truck, and it's only got 48,000 miles on it. Now, it needs a set of batteries.
There it is.
But, you can buy lithium drop-ins, not liquid cooled, for a couple $3,000 depending on where you get them. There's a lot of wholesale, and I'm thinking about it. I actually have an extra full Tesla pack sitting here. I just happen to have, and it has a little issue, but if I get that fixed, we could drop that into this truck and really have a couple hundred kilowatts.
How sick would that be?
100 miles of range.
Do you really think that's possible? They'll interact. The BMS will be just happy as hell with the totally different technology of battery.
You'll have to run an independent BMS for that pack and then integrate that into the truck. There is a couple of guys on YouTube that have taken these old Rangers and done a drop-in 12-volt replacement, because I think these were like 8 volts. So you have to tweak it anyway. You have to do a 12-volt replacement, and then BMS was happy. He did 100 miles of range, dropping in the total amount of batteries in the bed. He put them in the bed to get 100 miles of range out of this little truck. And as a roustabout around town, man, if you got 100 miles of range, that's awesome. Bring it home at night, plug it into a J1772, and you got a local. I would drive this thing back and forth to work, just because it's a cool little truck. And it's going to have the torque that you're used to in an electric vehicle. It's not going to feel doggy like the old 4-cylinder Rangers were. So,
yeah, man, I would. Like I say, if I could win the lottery and just have some money to play with, we could wrap it in a turn down for what podcast wrap. You could have your Tesla battery and get a couple 100 miles out of it, go to a bunch of EV events with it. And man, I would just deck it out. It would be so much fun to roll up in that unique EV part of history that, so few people have.
Well, they only made, I think, like 1,000 of these, and most of them got crushed by Ford.
Yeah.
So they're rare. I mean, as far as that goes. Now, they're rare, but they're in practicality use, they're worthless. I mean, a little Ranger would run 300,000 miles with that 4-cylinder or the V6, and you could go forever in it. You could take it across the nation. You're not going to do that with this truck unless you do a bunch of EV swapping with it. So
yeah, purely for fun, you know.
Yeah, just a fun little. I drive it back and forth to work. You know, I think it would be great for that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Speaking of EV, here's the other thing we bid on this today. So this is a little side by side Polaris Ranger EV. So these have a 48 volt, basically 50 volt system. They come out as a lead acid battery. And you can EV swap, you can lithium swap these, or there's a bunch of them on YouTube and on the Ranger EV Facebook groups. There's a bunch of guys selling upgrade kits for these. So $3 to $4 grand, you can put an upgrade kit in one of these, and they'll have 60 to 80 miles of range in a little Ranger.
Yeah.
So this one was a Florida buggy. It was a 2020. It brought $1,700, and I almost bought it, but it said mechanical, which I'm sure meant it needs batteries. You know, so this shares the powertrain with the John Deere Gator electric, which we have one of those. If you guys haven't seen my channel, go check that out. There's one on there, but it shares the powertrain. So it's the same powertrain. It only has about 30 horsepower. So it's not super powerful, but as a around the farm buggy, you put a couple of lithiums in this, it'll go 60 miles. You can run it and work it all day long. So kind of a neat little, you know, around the house if you've got a little bit of property. Anyway, we bought it. We didn't end up going that high because it was, number one, it was in Florida and I'm in Kansas, and there was no shipping available. So we'd had to drive down there and pick it up, which would have been a cool video. But anyway, didn't end up picking that one up.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into some route planning.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. We can, I guess
route
we can.
Planning 101.
101. Yeah. Let's talk about Ford route plan. Let's start with what they give you, right? Like you bought your Ford. Let's talk about what natively comes with it. And there's, and it has improved, but it still has a lot of gaps in it. And we can kind of talk about, I guess, starting with, for me, the elephant in the room, which is Tesla charging. You cannot, as you bring it up, natively find Tesla chargers.
That's correct.
And it's been almost a year.
Yeah, so it's been since we've been open, over a year now since we've been open to the Tesla network, and you can't just go into the Tesla navigation, the Ford navigation, and say, take me to the Tesla supercharger in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It won't do it. Now, if it's a Magic Dock station, for some reason they loaded those. So there's gonna be some guys out there that said, if I'm in Arlington, Texas, or Fort Worth, Texas, at that Lowe's, there's one, and it'll show you that one. Or there's one up in north of Iowa, and it'll show you that one. But they have to be a Magic Dock station. And now there's a lot of Magic Dock stations out there that are newer, those version 4 cabinets, that they're not on there either. It's only those original ones that they loaded back when, what was there, 12 or 15 of them or something when they first loaded those Magic Dock stations?
Less than that at first. I mean, there was some on the East Coast. California only had the one near Santa Cruz, and then there was New York that Tom Malogny went to, and
one in Fort Worth.
And the one in Fort Worth. Yeah, it started up really short, and then they added a few more. There was one up near Sacramento, and they got somewhere in a couple dozen of them. And now there's hundreds of V4s that have Magic Docks in them, but not all of them are enabled. There might be different regulatory reasons for that.
Maybe, but they're not in those newer cabinets, and all of the non adapter stations, which if you see on the screen, this is my video. This is what the Magic Dock looks like in the Tesla station. So if you pull up to one, this connector on this right side here will be right over here. This will be smaller or bigger. And you'll just pop that Magic Dock out of there, and you can charge with those. But you can't get to those. So, like, okay, if you're going to route plan across a state or the country or whatever, and Chris, you've done it some. I've done two Canada trips pulling a boat, multiple cross country trips pulling vehicles, Lightnings and F-150s, and it is difficult to do that. So a lot of guys up front want to know, well, how do I add Tesla stops in this Lightning navigation? And we'll get to that in a minute. I kind of wanted to show, a little bit about what that looks like. So like if you look at the factory navigation screen, of course it's going to make me watch my.
It's going to drop an ad. That's funny.
It's got to drop an ad for this generator real quick. You can go through this and it'll kind of show you, like this was a trip that I did that just from my house to Atlanta, Georgia, right? Like how do I get to the Tesla stations? Because once we opened them, that was the only one I wanted to use. And for two reasons. Number one was price. But number two, mostly was convenience of the area, and they're right on the turnpike, right on the highways, and they're usually functional. Like Chris, you mentioned earlier, they work. I've been at one Tesla station ever that the chargers didn't work, and I had to move down to the end of the. I mean, it wasn't the whole site, right?
Yeah, there's multiple options, many, and usually 8, but as many as 50 or 60, 80 if you're in Quartzsite, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're gonna find a working one.
Here in the Midwest, we usually have a minimum of 8, if not 16. I think there's 20 or 30 at the Tulsa station close to us. So, but if you see here, if you go in and you watch, you guys can. We'll put a link and you can watch this video. But as you go in and you can search by Tesla near, like this is Ozark, Arkansas, and it comes up and shows you that's Tesla, like the Tesla Ozark supercharger. And so it'll allow you to route to those. You can hit select and you can plan the trip out, save your trip. I love the trip planning function in the Lightning's factory navigation because you can plan the trip out and save.
I love that it shows you how far you can go. It has that circle around it that gives you, this is how far you can go.
Now that's the rest estimate based on whatever the hell the truck thinks it can do. That's a different conversation, right? About GOM estimates. So I typically don't pay any attention to that circle or any circle for that matter in any car, because what I need to know is what's my weather going to do today? What's my efficiency doing? Really, it boils down to know your vehicle's range based off a couple of quick calculations. So how big's your battery, times how much battery you have left, times the efficiency you're getting currently. So Chris, you've got basically let's just call it 100 kilowatts for cowboy math, right? 100 kilowatts, you're getting at 100% battery, 2 mile per kilowatt hour. You've got a 200-mile range on the highway. That's a real range. Now, that's
perfect conditions? That is perfect.
Is that, you think 200 miles is your real range? Would you drive that truck 200 miles?
I can't. So when I was talking about Sacramento earlier, right? Sacramento is exactly 210 miles round trip from my house to the Sacramento FedEx that I go to and then back. It's 210 miles, which from my house to the freeway is, probably 15 minutes of surface street. So that buys me some efficiency. And then the rest of it is pretty much freeway. And so because of the combination, I can get 210, but the first 10 of that
and drive 80 miles an hour, you're not doing it.
Well, yeah. And that's the other thing too, right? In California, you're not driving 80 miles an hour ever. And so you'll get to experience this when you come in June. You'll get to
wear me out.
Yeah, it's maybe if you're going down I-5, you can hit 80 miles an hour, sure, but around the Bay Area in most of those areas, you're not hitting 85. You're sometimes as low as 40. You might get a 60, 65, 70. You might get brief spots where you can go 80.
We're that way in Kansas too, Chris. If we're not on our roads are all 65 here, and you get into Texas and Oklahoma where you get onto the turnpikes and some of the bigger roads, they get to 75, 80, even 85 in Texas. But we are like that here. So my truck, when I comment on Facebook or I'm giving advice, it's usually based around a 70 mile per hour number because that's a good average. Now, if you're taking a trip from Tulsa to Texas on I-35 South, if you're running 75, you're getting run over. The trucks run 80 to 85, even though the turnpike is 75 mile an hour on most of it. You can't do that in a Lightning and expect. So I think I mentioned to you today, you're running and you have that 200-mile range, but really you're going to get 1.7 if you want to run with the flow of traffic on the interstate, right? On these big highways. So 1.7 at 100 kilowatts is 170 miles. But even at that, you don't run that truck from 0 to 100 on a road trip. You try to stop at least 5, if not 10% at the bottom.
That's what I target is 5%. Yeah.
Yeah. And really, like you've mentioned before, you really want to try to target 80% on the top because the Lightning's got a hell of a charge curve up to 80. You've had many videos on this. We've talked about it many times. So if you can plan your trip when we get to the trip planner in a better route planner here in a few, it kind of really gives you all those options, which is some of the stuff that I don't like about this factory Ford navigation is you don't have the ability to tell the truck, stop me at 5% and charge me to 80. Or I know I need to go like why is there not options that says charge me to 80% unless you need me to charge more to get to the next station and then allow that if needed, right? Why don't we have
it lacks the ability to say, I want to reach the charger at 5%. I want to reach my destination at 25%. I want to charge up to this amount. All the little cool things that a great route planner will do are all missing from.
Yeah. And none of them are perfect. Even Tesla, you know, you can't tell a Tesla minimum 10, minimum 15, minimum 20. You can't tell it that. It'll show you that round trip function, but you know, as we're knocking it, the simplicity of that Tesla charger is just put in a destination and it will reroute you if needed. It's more, I think the Tesla the Tesla navigation is more aggressive with rerouting than the Ford navigation. Cause I've been in situations had I listened to the Ford navigation, this navigation, and caught a headwind, it doesn't account for it and it would have run me out.
Yeah. And I find that, the Ford Gessameter isn't too bad. Like for at least out here in California, it does seem to account for elevation changes. It does seem to account for some type of weather changes. It's and maybe the weather might be different or whatever, but for the most part,
I have wind. I mean, honestly, you're not fighting anything different in the summer than we are on. But if you're headed north in Kansas is a windy state. If you're headed north in Kansas and the wind's crossing you at 20 miles an hour, you're not going to get hit really hard. But this happens to us every year when we go to Colorado. We're running north up to the I-70 corridor that runs from Kansas City to Denver. Soon as we hang a left and head west, my efficiency immediately goes from 1.8 at 70 miles an hour to 1.6. It's just instant.
I had the opposite thing happen to me on the way to Vegas, where the wind was pushing me along to Vegas, and I was doing like 80 miles an hour and getting like 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour. It was unbelievable, and I was worried because I
get that mileage because you got that wind pushing you. So really, it's all about if you just add or subtract the wind to whatever you're going. That's the speed you're now going. If you're running 80 into a 20 mile an hour headwind, guess what? You're running 100.
Yeah,
or like you said, you were running 80 with a 30 mile an hour tailwind.
I think it was 24. I think it was 24 miles.
But you're running like 65 or 60. You know, it's awesome.
It was great. It was absolutely great. And I was worried I'd get the opposite effect on the way back, but the wind had died down by the time I was coming back, so that wasn't an issue. And I was worried that I wasn't going to make it to Vegas because there wasn't a supercharger option in between. And I had been avoiding the EAs. And part of the challenge of the video was could I go from home to the hotel and back only using the Tesla supercharging network. Even at the hotel, there was a Tesla charger there, a destination charger. So that was kind of the part of the challenge of the video. And I was able to do it because a lot of that might have been because of that wind pushing me to Vegas. But it was, it was one of those where it was the first time I ran into the thing where I couldn't use the native navigation, but then what the native navigation does do well is it would precondition my battery for me, which
that's correct. Which it does on everything except for what I'm showing here in the video.
Okay.
You know, it will if you go to any of them that are loaded, it will do that. Now I can't confirm that it preconditions going to the Tesla Magic Docks that are loaded. I think it does, but I'd have to confirm that one. But if you look at this is a lot. I mean, this video has been playing here for what, 17 minutes or 11 minutes, and we're not done yet. We're adding stops. You really should be able to just do an automatic plan. Like, and I've tried some of these. I'll click ahead here. Of course, you got to watch another video here. Wonderful.
We got to get you to sign up for premium. Oh, that's disgusting. What do we got to?
Yeah. Why do we have that up? So like you look here, this is what we planned out on this trip. And I had to manually put these in. And then once I saved it, I didn't lose it. That's another good thing about the Ford. I can save these trips. I can get in my truck before a trip, save these off, and they're there. Or you used to be able to do this in Trip Planner in the Ford Pass app, and they've taken that away for now. But now at least I could jump in there and do this with The only other system that I know of that you can route plan ahead like this easily is a Better Route Planner. I've tried it in the Google EV trip planning, which I'll bring up here in a second. And you can go into Google and you can plan some trips out, but they don't roll over to the truck seamlessly like this one did with the route planner.
So pluses, right? You can, it's gonna give you the ease of use of being native, and it's going to show you the Ford charging network and everything that's available with Plug and Charge. And you can find Tesla chargers if you use the public charging app that is in the truck.
Yeah,
you can send those destinations to the navigation, but they are just destinations. It's just like if you were to navigate to Home Depot, it doesn't know that the Tesla charger is a charger any more than it thinks that Home Depot is a charger.
In the Lightning, in the summer, I can just run Google EV routing or Google Maps or whatever I want, because I don't need to. When you're driving the Lightning in the summer, anytime that battery's over about 60 to 70 degrees, it's gonna fast charge well.
Yep. It does very well with
that. Winter is when the preconditioning really, if you're up north guys that are in Canada or up north in the winter, they have to have this to be able to precondition that battery, or they're going to pull in and be there double the amount of time. And the Mach-E really takes a hit on these. The Mach-E charge curve, if the Mach-E battery is at 50 degrees or less, it's supposed to charge on the bottom at 150 kilowatts. And I pulled into a station at 50-degree battery because I couldn't. Our connected navigation was the what do you call it? The renewal hadn't happened yet. So we didn't have it turned on. So I had no way of preconditioning, and I got 55 kilowatts at that station.
Yeah. To me, it's just crazy to me that if you can't work with your partner to get better route planning updates, at least put in a manual battery precondition button. How hard could it be to just throw a button up there that I can manually press to precondition the dang battery manually? I mean, that has got to be so basic, easy for me to say. I don't know anything about coding, but
another little thing, when I'm coming home on a trip, if you look at your area that you're in and there's no fast chargers in your 60-mile range and in the Midwest or in rural areas, you're going to have that. Let me set up my home as a charging station, because every trip we go on, I come in with 2 to 4% battery. I've got it timed, because I don't usually at the end of the trip, you're just charging up enough to get home. You don't want to pay extra at those fast chargers, and you just want to be home. You know, our trip to South Carolina to get Joe's truck was 60 hours in total. And we had to do about 20 of that in charging, maybe a little more. So by the end of the trip, I just want to be home. But it won't let you sit there and go, home is a charging station, is where I'm going with this.
Yep. It should know that. It should know I've got home charging.
And it, to Lightning's credit, it is warning you the entire time. You're not going to make it. You are outside of your range. You're not going to make it. And I have to keep hitting cancel. And I'm thinking, hey, I'm headed home. There's a charger there.
Yeah, you should be able to tell it at home or at work or wherever you should be able to tell it when you've saved that as a favorite or as a destination. Tell it as there's, and this can extend to other things.
Chris, you could do every Tesla station that you go to, and it would do that. And if they could say, is this a station, and precondition the battery, that ought to be something that the user could do. If you want to waste energy preconditioning your battery, that should be on you, not Ford's decision.
Yeah, and so that is it would be such a great thing if you can't fix the native navigation to have all of these things. That setting would be so great, because to your point, I do have all of my best strategic chargers, the ones that I like the most, that are all over California. I should say Southern California, because I haven't been north really beyond Sacramento. I would have to do some charging up north more. But all my chargers down I-5, down 101, my favorite chargers in the LA area, my favorite chargers to Vegas. I have all my favorites saved, so I can easily go in and pull up my old route plan like you talked about. If I'm going to, I've been to Long Beach, I've been to San Diego, I've been to Vegas. If I'm going to any of those places, I can easily pull up my old one, and I can easily pull up any of my favorite areas and go to them, but they don't, just like the house, they don't know it's a charger. So if I could tell it that does this destination have a charger? You should have a checkbox that says, yes, this destination has a charger, and it would incorporate that. How hard could that be?
And we're kind of knocking about Ford, and I feel like I'm being a little hard on them here, but there's just a few key things that need to be changed. And then this is a fantastic navigation as far as navigations go, because I've been in other, like the Hyundai and the Volkswagen, and trust me, Ford is got a really good thing going here with their navigation. But if you had a precondition upon request, if you could define charging stations and have the automatic route planning a little more, really, this is all we need, just a little more user friendly. Like, say, okay, I want to prioritize types of chargers. Tell me Tesla's first, EA second, EV goes third, and everything else after that. And go to those first. And then just have in the settings a quick menu, target minimum charge, target maximum charge, target arrival charge, just like a better route planner. And so that might be a good segue into that here in a minute, is to roll over to basically why I understand why Rivian bought a better route planner and kind of natively put that in there. It doesn't come up and say a better route planner, but that's the back end system they're using now.
Right. But before we get to better route planner, let's touch real quick
before we move on.
I think the other we'll finish up with better route planner, because I think that may be the best of the current options. In my opinion, if you need route planning, you're hesitant. Okay.
I'm hesitant because if I leave on a trip tomorrow, there's one route planner I'm absolutely using, and it's Google. It's 100% the best now.
Let's start with Google, like Android Auto, which again, when I left Android for CarPlay, it had nothing to do with the truck. It was entirely because my daughter was getting an iPhone, and I needed to be connected in that way to that kind of ecosystem. And so before that, I had Android Auto, I should say, not Android Automotive. That's different, but Android Auto. And I loved it. I loved Android Auto, but the one thing missing is it didn't have the Tesla chargers, and it didn't integrate with the BMS the way that Apple Maps did. And so I was like, oh, well, at least I'll get Apple Maps will integrate at least with the BMS, although they also don't have Tesla charging. And then, of course, like a month after I switched, Google Maps within Android Auto now is integrated with the BMS and does include Tesla charging, like finally,
and preconditioning if you need it.
So yeah, that is probably actually the best of the options now that I think of it. It's not the best of my options because I don't have it anymore. I did try to put an old Android phone into my truck only to use it for the user interface, and it's so old and laggy that it does work.
What happened to your Android you just got rid of? That should have worked fine.
I traded it in because you got a huge credit for trading it in to get the new iPhone that you needed for when I changed plans.
I can't imagine Apple wanting Androids off the market.
No, yeah, it's I needed the credit, to be honest with you. I got a huge credit for that. I got like a $900 credit or something on some promo deal.
So you didn't really have a phone to be able to use that. So you really are stuck with whatever Apple CarPlay gives you.
Yeah. And so it's really unfortunate because the Apple CarPlay, to your point, is great for navigation around town where I don't have to worry about charging. It works fine. It doesn't have the satellite view, which I prefer the satellite view that a better route planner has and that Google has and that Tesla has.
And I don't.
So you don't like it? Okay.
Even the Tesla superchargers, I don't like the clutter. I like to see a nice clean screen. You'll notice all of mine are set up that way with a nice clean screen. But the ability to have that, like you like it one way and I like it another, that's
flexibility.
An easy button to click.
Yep.
So if you go in and you set up your electric vehicle first, you have to set it up for electric vehicle. Otherwise, I don't think it recognizes. So it's something in your settings in your Google account. I'm not even in the truck at this point when we're talking about this. This is just to go in, click on you have to go down and then you set it to under your vehicle, set it to electric. And then once you do that, it kind of opens up the plugs and adapters. So I've got CCS and a NACS, that's the key. That's the whole key to have that adapter there. So you go in and you set those up. And once you get that done, then we roll back over here to the truck. And now one of the big things that we see is you get these battery percentages. And like these are two of my local, it suggests these every day, kind of like the suggestive navigation we'll do in a Ford. And for those that are listening back in the Ford navigation, to roll back for just a second, if you get in your truck and it shows a destination and it's telling you to turn somewhere, there's a setting in there that will basically predict, if they call it predictive navigation, It'll predict where you're going to go and automatically start the navigation. And I personally don't like that because I do the same thing every day and I don't need navigation for that. But that's what these two are doing. They're kind of giving me the two places that I tend to go and telling me what my battery percentage will be without having to click any buttons. So that is part of the reason why I like it so well. But we keep moving along here, and you'll see you can just click search. You can really quickly just type in a destination. So like this trip, I was going to Oklahoma City. You just click it and click start, and you have to do nothing else. You don't do anything else. You just click start. And that is the simplicity part why I pick Google EV routing over the Ford routing when I'm not towing. And we can get to that here in a minute because there's a different opinion when you're towing a trailer. You can scroll down through the Google EV routing. You can do you can look at your stops. You can go in and replace your stops right on the screen. And I think that's one of the things that is lacking in CarPlay. Am I wrong, Chris? Because I don't have CarPlay.
Yeah, CarPlay, it's going to give you only non-Tesla stops, and then whatever it suggests, you're locked into that route. You can't.
See, this one you can do it here and you can do it live. You just can't do it while you're moving. If you notice, I'm sitting in front of my garage on this, but you can look at these. And if you're like, okay, this is where I'm at, I don't necessarily like it. If you was to click this button, this little flag button right here, it brings, and I think I show you here in a minute, it brings up the route that you're on. And then you can actually say, okay, I want to change. So yeah, here we go. Here's the route detail, and it stops. That's huge. If you decide that I don't want to stop at the Tesla Supercharger in Tulsa, I want to go to the EV Go or whatever. It doesn't.
Does it show it here in the video?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So you go in and you just like we're just going to go in and like this. Here's one going to Jacksonville. And I don't want to go through the entire video. You guys can go hit that video up and watch it. It's pretty intuitive. But you know, when you go through, you can click on a stop and edit that stop and change it to another charger. So it's really easy to change to a different charger. So like I think in this one, the first stop it was wanting to stop me at was not one that I wanted to be. So I just edit the stops and took it out. You know, I don't typically try to go to stops that are not Tesla because of the cost, like I mentioned earlier. So
I'm still not a fan of the whole idea that I've got to search through a list. I want to see, like, man, I'm a 12-year-old man. I like pictures. I want to see on the screen. I want to see the picture of the map, and I want to see where the chargers are. I want to tap on it. I want to cancel one out. I want to add one. It's
not quite that intuitive.
Yeah,
I think you have to edit stops and do a list. Now on a better route planner, you can do that, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But
now you can only with a better. Yeah, we'll get to that. Let's not jump ahead. But yes, okay. Yeah.
So if a better route planner had more, and we're jumping ahead a little, but if a better route planner had more Android Auto interface functionality, it would absolutely be my favorite because it integrates with the truck. But again, you know, Google EV routing, I have a couple of trips coming up. We may be headed to St. Louis next week. There might be another lightning project coming up on Martin Rebuilds. If it works out, I got one of the guys on the Facebook group wrecked his truck, and if everything works, we're going to try to buy it in an ER XLT, which they don't make anymore. So that'll be a St. Louis 5-hour trip without charging stops. So I will probably use the Ford navigation because it should be warm enough that I don't need to use preconditioning. And the reason I'm bringing that up is like we talked about, you can't precondition in the Ford navigation to a Tesla Supercharger. So I know what my truck's going to do. If I'm pulling a trailer, I'm heating the battery up more anyway. So unless it's super cold, I don't need preconditioning pulling a trailer. It's heating it up anyway. You know, anything over 30 degrees, 40 degrees outside, the truck's going to get warm in the battery just from the use, the electrons flowing in and out.
Yep. Yeah, I took when I did my tonneau cover range test, pretty much, you know, even though I left in the morning, it was chilly, California chilly, right? And not Kansas chilly, not Canada chilly, California chilly. So it was in the high 30s, low 40s. By the time I got to Central Valley of California, I drove an hour and a half. over some hills over to what's called the Altamont Pass, which is this area that separates the Bay Area from the Central Valley. So by the time I drove an hour and a half out there, by the time I plugged in at the charger and supercharged it back up to 80% and was ready for my test, the sun had come out, the fog was gone, the temperature was right, the battery was where it needed to be. So it was kind of perfect conditions for that.
Now, had you preconditioned headed to that charger?
I wouldn't have needed to, and it didn't have the ability to do it. So
you were using CarPlay.
I was using CarPlay for that, and it didn't have the ability to precondition it. And it turned out I didn't need it, and it still hit like 171 kilowatt.
Did you happen to monitor battery temps at that point?
Yeah. So in fact, I wrote them all down. Yeah, on the video for those that are interested, pull it up. I go through all of that. I go through outside temperature, battery temperature, pack voltage, so you can see the low end and the high end of the pack. I got all of that information, and I pulled it all off of the Car Scanner app. So I had all of that logged so that people could see, like, hey, how many kilowatts did the battery start at? How many kilowatts kilowatt hours did it end with?
And that's important.
See what was used. Yeah,
those numbers are all important. And honestly, I wish they had like an analytics screen or something in Lightning that you could see all that data, because some of us care, some of us would never use it. So just leave that screen alone if you're not the guy who doesn't use it, because if the Lightning charged the same every time, you didn't have to mess with it, and it worked like it was supposed to every time, I wouldn't even care about those screens that much. But because there's this delta between in the winter and in the summer, and what's my state of charge, and how warm's the battery, and all these things, I need to know so I can plan ahead.
And it's funny because there's a segment of people that want to see that data, because when I look back at my YouTube analytics, it's funny because I'll always go back and look at the video and see kind of how it did and what's the average amount of time people started watching it, and did it dip at a certain point. So it's interesting that, when you're building a YouTube video, sometimes you're trying to tell a story. So you kind of have an intro, you have a little bit of time where you see the truck driving and you throw some music on there, right? And then you show your charging, you show your data. Well, the part where it is the truck just driving down I-5 with some music playing, there's literally a dip. And then right after the dip, you can tell people are fast forwarding, right? Like, you're driving, fine. And then you can see the dip. And then you see when I go to do the data, it spikes up to where I'm actually charging. And then when I show, the very moment that I show the banner where I had inserted like an Excel form on the screen that showed the data for each stop. Whenever I inserted it, you could see that it's paused, or people would replay it and it would spike up, and then it would kind of come back. So it's there is a segment that wants to see that data. It absolutely exists.
I agree 100%. And the problem with it is we don't get any of that data unless you use an aftermarket device. We went over that. Watch, I think, is episode 2 or 3, where we talked about how to do ForeScan and a better route, or I'm sorry, the OBD2. We probably should. I think next week we're talking a little more in apps. This is more navigation this week, but we'll get into maybe Car Scanner and how to read and do some of those things. But you're right. You need that data, because if it's not warm out, you don't have a precondition, you're going to pull up to a charger and see 50 kilowatts, and you're like, "What's wrong with my truck?" If you even know it, that's the other thing.
Yeah,
the 24s have that charge speed on the dash. So let's say you're a newbie. You've just bought your Lightning this week, because I see a lot of those posts on our Facebook group. I just got my Lightning this week. What tips and tricks should I do? Well, how do they know, first of all, what their battery should be? How do they know what speeds they should see? There's not a lot of, it's not plastered across the dash that you should see, because you're used to driving a gas truck. You don't pull up to a gas pump and worry about the speed unless it's really slow, because everybody has a feel for what gas pumps pump at. I know when I drove a lot of diesel pickups, I'd pull in the big nozzle, because, the 5 minutes it took to pump 36 gallons in my diesel wasn't enough. I need to do that in a minute and a half. So they have the big nozzle, and you could pump it in there fast. But with a Lightning, if you pull up and it's running 50 kilowatts, you're 2 hours. 2 hours. And that was like our first Canada trip. Everything north of Minneapolis was 50 kW. Everything.
So to your point, in the spring and the summer, you almost don't have to think about it. The battery, as long as it's above 80, you just do your thing and it's going to be fine, which most of the time, even in California, For the fall, you're fine, and maybe it's an issue just for a little bit, in December, January,
or Florida,
February,
or South Texas. For the most part, if you're in the southern part of the U.S., for the most part, just drive your truck.
Even
Use
today,
whatever navigation you want, and none of this really matters.
I mean, we're end of winter time technically here, and today it was mid 70s. It'll first
68 today, 76 tomorrow in Kansas. But a week ago, I think last podcast, it was 0 here.
Yeah. So
those days I get I have an extended range, and those days I'm getting like 150-mile range, very, very maximum.
Oh, that's brutal. That's just brutal. Yeah, and charging without preconditioning, if you're trying to charge in that temperature, you're
terrible.
And so it's just
30, 40 kilowatts until that battery can take enough juice to warm itself up, and you'll see it ramp up, but it's slow. So
and it's
that's
crazy
why we keep
they're
talking about preconditioning here.
They're in Michigan. That's what's funny is it's not like they're Tesla that's an Austin and California car company, right? It's not like it's a Rivian that's out here, Lucid that's out here in California. Ford is in Michigan, guys. You know that you've got to be able to sell this stuff.
The problem, I think that's why they're doing, and I don't want to say the word, they're doing this from last week, pivot.
The pivot.
Yeah. So anyway, go watch that video of them. It was a hilarious skit, play on the old Fringe show, Pivot. Ford's doing a pivot over to EREVs, I think, because they're not selling enough of these. And I think the biggest problem is this stuff. So I don't want to dig into that too deep, but basically there's not a lot of energy being put into route planning and preconditioning. And I think if you're going to build an EV, you better build one and have all the engineers designing it. Go drive the damn thing. Go drive it and come back.
A lot of them do. A lot of them have these great deals with the Mach-E and the Lightning for these employees. And a lot of the employees I see that are on Facebook and LinkedIn and X, there's some, shout out to Robert, who is with the charging team, and Jake.
But are they moving the needle? Like, does somebody that drives those cars come back to the table at Ford and say, guys, this sucks. You have got to fix this or this. And we've talked about a few of them here tonight.
I don't think they're in a position to do that. I think Ford knows.
That's my problem. They should be.
Know.
Don't put those people in those positions if they're not willing to move the needle, or don't build an EV. I mean, honestly, because I shouldn't say that too loud. I'll take my Lightning again. If I sell this one I'll take it again tomorrow with the same stuff. But good Lord, it's so easy to fix.
And to be clear, like when we're critical about the route planning, or when we're critical about some of these things, it's because we love the product. It's because we know that they're miles ahead of Toyota. We know they're miles ahead of Volkswagen, and we know that there's a lot of reasons the Mach-E is right behind Tesla in terms of what sells in the US. Yep. We know the Lightning is right there with Cybertruck in terms of what sells in the US. We wanted to compete. We wanted to compete with these guys that are in China, not with VW, not with Toyota BZ4X, right? So we know that there's a lot of things it does well that a number of Nissan and all these others they're miles behind Ford.
Oh yeah.
But we want them to be a major league player, right? And so when we say these things, it's not because we don't love the product or love Ford. It's because we want them to be up there competing against the Dodgers and the Patriots, and not the Patriots now, but the Patriots of the past, the Kansas City Chiefs. We want them to be the New York Yankees. We want them to be in that mix, man. We want people to have an alternative.
I think we are.
Yeah.
But if you're a car driver and you've been in Tesla and you move to Ford, most of those folks don't enjoy that transition. Some do, but most of them don't enjoy that transition because of the tech. And that's the thing that we're trying to, if Tesla didn't exist, I would still have the same complaints. I don't drive a Tesla across country. I have one. We actually own like 4 of them now, but I wouldn't take one across country. Even I was considering when we come out to see you this summer, hey, we're going to take the Model S because of the free supercharging that the car has. I would never have to.
That's compelling. That's compelling.
You know what? I thought that, and I thought that was a huge selling point, and I know why they give it away, because most people don't use it. If you pull in a 2014 Model S at 20%, you're going to see 80 to 90 kilowatts.
Yeah, the charging on those older ones especially, and even on the new Teslas, man, it's all lower pack. If you're trying to go up to 70, 80,
Well, my
90%,
daughter,
God
her
help you.
Model 3 is a 22 model, and it runs about 250 for a little bit, and it'll taper down. It's got a pretty good curve, but the old Model S's, they're 175 to 180 mile range on those cars on the highway speed, and I'm stopping every 2 hours to charge for an hour. Negative. Sorry, Tom, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. It's and even with my Lightning, I tend to go, honestly, when I'm on the road, because I have the standard range pack, I almost always charge to 90%, even though I know 80 to 90 isn't great.
And really, you're only charging to 80 though, so you're fine. You could go to 100, and other than the speed, you could go to 100 as far as hurting the pack. Now, as far as time on the road,
90 to 100 is crazy. Like the only time I go 90 to 100 is if we stop and go inside of a restaurant. So for example, whenever we stop at Harris Ranch, which is a big famous stop out here in California,
cool to go to.
It's great. Yeah, it's a huge supercharger. You can get steak and all that stuff. And the thing is, I'll always set it to 100%, not because I'm going to charge to 100%, but because by the time you get sat and you eat your food and you get back to the charger, you're probably above 90. You're probably 92, 94, 97, and I don't want to hit idle fees. And so I set it to 100. And that also helps me get further down into Southern California. So if I'm going to go in and sit down at a restaurant, I'll change it to 100% more to avoid idle fees than anything else.
I do that every time too, Chris, even with an extended range. Not necessarily to avoid idle fees. There are times if I pull in at 55% and I know we got to charge, it actually makes it difficult to go eat in a restaurant. I can't sit down at Chili's for 1 hour if I'm at 55%. Even changing it to 100, because it'll be there before I'm ready. So this is going to sound counterintuitive, I almost want to slow it down so that I don't get the idle fees. But that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, how hard is it to jump out of the restaurant and go move the vehicle, right?
Well, in Harris Ranch, it's a bit of a jaunt. I mean, it would take you quite 15 minutes to get back there and back.
So
it's not like just jumping. Right. It's not just jumping outside.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the thing is, for me, I tow a lot, and so I'm at 100%. I leave my truck when I leave on a trip, and I got a trailer hooked on. I go into and change everything always. I don't do that one-time charge. The whole time I change everything to 100%, because there are stops when I have to have it, and it's just that's why we talked about the E-Rev and Martin Rebuilds doing the generator in the pack. I think a lot of guys have looked into that or watched our post, and we're working through that right now. We eventually will have that drop-in generator where you don't have, I'm not a gas fan. I don't want to get off on this tangent tonight because it's not what our plan was, but I'm not a gas fan. I don't want a Ram charger. I don't think the E-Revs are as good of a solution, but we don't have the tech to get around it for our lifestyles that Americans have right now. We want our cake, and we want it now.
I was shocked when we did the pivot episode and we talked about it and posted about it, and we got comments and all these different things. I was really shocked. I thought for sure that even within the EV community, people would, or especially in the EV community, people would be like, "Oh man, that's a cop out. What are you doing?" No, like person after person. There was a lot of people that, of course, are all battery. They're all in. They're not going back. I'm one of those people. Like you can't get me into an E-Rev. But again, I'm not telling
that way
too. But there were a lot of people, a lot of EV full-in people that are on X and on Facebook, and time after time they would be like, they think it's a great idea. That's what they would want if they were in a truck.
And here's why, Chris. And this is just my opinion. You want to convert people to full battery, you have to get them into the battery power and what that feels like. So if you yourself had not been in a Lightning, and you went and drove a Ram charger, and you could drive this next trip. This trip you have coming up is a prime example why the Ram charger. You could drive on electric all day, every day. And if that truck comes out at $50,000, aside that I'm going to knock the Ram guys because I'm not a Ram fan, but that's a hell of a bargain for a truck that you could run electric, the same power, feel, hopefully NVH, hopefully creature comforts of it won't have a frunk, but everything but that you're going to get with your Lightning. But then go on a trip, and you're not going to have I think when I sent you that A Better Route Planner plan this morning had 14 stops.
Yeah, it was kind of
brutal.
16 hours. Yeah. No, it would be way easier for everybody, for the family, for everybody involved, for the 3 times a year that I need to do that. that kind of trip.
With the system we're talking about, Chris, I'm going to throw this out there because this is something I've been wanting to discuss with you. What if we put a 6,500 watt Honda generator in the receiver hitch on your truck, plugged it in, just one plug in, and now your truck charged while going down the road? Because that's all it's going to have to be if I figure this out. You could rent one of those.
I would never do it. Even if it was a better idea, I would never do it because for me, it is a meme waiting to happen. It is a picture waiting to happen to be circulated online. Look at this dork EV driver.
How about in the bed of your truck then? How about instead of the receiver? How about in the bed where nobody can see it under the tonneau cover? That's my plan.
I think just philosophically, you know what I mean? I want to be able to speak to it as an owner of an EV, and I don't want to be out there talking about EV ownership and not live the full experience. And the full experience is still the hard parts, and things like the route planning.
How many years ago was it? And I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. I know you said before and last week you're hard headed, and let's banter a little bit because this is kind of fun. You said, but how many years ago was it that you were a gas fan? Like your last F-150 that wasn't electric, what was it?
So I mean that was 2008, and I had to get rid of it in like 2013 when I started getting to thinking about a family and that kind of thing. The truck wasn't going to work, but I loved it. I loved that 2008. It was an F-150. It was a Lariat, just like I have now. Trucks. Yeah, I spent some time recently in an STX that 700 miles of range.
We bought one of those last week. We're building it in on Martin Rebuild right now.
It's got Pro Power on board in the back. It's got all the I said, Jesus, I had that thing for a couple weeks and I said, wow. I made a whole video on it about how I can see why it's hard to convert to electric. If this is the option, if I can get 25 miles per gallon on the freeway with this hybrid and all of the comfort. I mean, it wasn't as good as the Lightning, of course. It wasn't as quiet. But when you're going down the road at an even idle, it's not loud. It's still
they're not loud, but they're no lighting, and I think that's where I'm at. I'm not going back to gas. I mean, but I don't want to be ignorant to the fact that where we come from was a super, and it is one of the most super efficient. Think about your 08. That truck got 14 to 15 miles to gallon.
It 13.
Now the same truck is getting 24 on the highway.
Yeah, they've gotten much, much better. I think for me, what I worry that it does, and I feel like, fairly or not, I feel like it's reality. It has removed the urgency, and I've experienced this out here in California with my 9-to-5 job, where California had a mandate. Trigger word, right? Had a mandate that by certain years, certain things had to happen, and by certain years, you couldn't buy gas vehicles. And this extended to a certain percentage of your vehicle, your fleet vehicles, had to be electrified if you were a commercial operator of a certain size. So, being that my 9-to-5, we are a commercial operator all over the state, there were mandates that said X percent of your fleet has to be electric by this year, by this year, by this year. And it became clear that was not going to happen. And so the state, what's called the CARB group, they went in the CARB standards, California's
Air Resource Board.
Right. They went through and they dropped it. They literally dropped it this year. And what went from my 9-to-5 having incredible urgency around it, like, we have to do this. We're trying to find suppliers. We're going Exos and BrightDrop and like anybody who else makes electric. The problem was not enough manufacturers had enough vehicles to even buy them if we could. And then when we would go to try to throw a charging transformer in at one of our commercial hubs for for charging overnight, you were waiting years to get the transformer you needed to have DC charging, AC charging, all the different stuff that was going to go into a fleet of vehicles. So they backed away from it, and I can absolutely tell the difference now in the urgency that my 9-to-5 has. I can absolutely tell now that there's been some political wind changes and some different changes, some pivots to go back, right? I can absolutely tell a difference in Ford's urgency. I can tell the difference in the way that Jim Farley talks. Jim Farley,
I mean, it's a business decision for them. I think we all love the Lightning. I think there's a lot of guys just for daily commute, even the people that I don't know, want to use that word. The haters on the Lightning, they recognize it has a place.
Yeah.
Even if I hate when I see it's only good for around town because I've been everywhere in it and I won't do anything else, but it has a place. But you take a truck like the Ram Charger and you plug it in. If you take the Lightning and throw the 2.7 liter V6 in the front and throw a generator on the back of it, you lose the frunk, but now you got a 700 mile range truck. I mean, holy crap. Now we have changed the game.
And I will say, you don't have to lose the frunk. I mean, I hope when Ford starts to do these E-Revs.
Yeah, the Scout's got that Boxster engine that's horizontal, and I think they can fit it underneath there, or you could put it.
Yeah,
I don't want to lose the frunk either after having it. It's one of those first world problems that I didn't know I needed.
If they do, I would be shocked if they don't find a way to keep the frunk, because it is such a big part of the personality and of the ethos of what Ford Electric was or is. And Scout, look, if Scout can do it, Ford has to do that. They have to maintain that frunk.
The Lightning's the only one. If you drive a Mach-E, which we have, we don't use that thing. Number one, it's not power.
That's why. It's because it's not powered.
Not power. But number two, it's tiny. I mean, I can't if I'm going to buy groceries at Walmart.
Yeah.
I know I can get our entire family's load of groceries in the frunk of the Lightning. You cannot do that in the Mach-E, so we don't even try.
Yeah, the best one is now the Lucid Gravity. Their SUV has a really nice frunk. Of course, Lightning, Silverado, all of the GM's, the GM products have.
They're all frunk. Big. Even Rivian, even though you have to go up over, it's still pretty good size.
The Lucid, the front of the Lucid is pretty decent. The Rivian is pretty decent. So there's frunks out there that do it the right way, and even Tesla. I can fit into the Tesla Model 3. I can take my carry-on luggage, the luggage that fits up in an airplane, up in the cargo of an airplane. I can fit that into the front.
Well, the Model
S.
I should show you some pictures of the Model S. I can get into and close the hood on a Model S frunk.
Yeah. So
it's huge.
That frunk for me, and it's funny because kind of talking about the E-Rev thing with Scout, they said that 70% of their orders, of their pre-orders, are the E-Rev. Only 30% is the pure electric. So that's the reality, right? And to your,
I just made the E-Rev, and I hate to say that because it's And here's why
most are doing that.
I don't. Here the main reason is it's going to be my wife's truck. We ordered the Terra. And it's going to be my wife's truck. And so for that reason, I want her to be able to get in that truck if she wants to take our daughter to Denver or Dallas and not have to fight a charging infrastructure.
Yep.
They're driving next Wednesday an hour away to a college to look at colleges with my daughter. And her first question was, can I make it? And I'm like, it's an hour. That's 2-hour drive. You're good. And there's a charger in that town. But she still had a little bit of anxiety around that. So to me, and I know we've talked about E-Revs here. We need to get to a better route planner, but to me, that E-Rev is going to fill a void. That no more charging if you don't need it, and run electric at home when you want to, or not.
And I think going back to your kind of comment, we'll kind of wrap it up on that. Is you said there are people out there that say, yeah, it's great for around town, and it is awesome for around town. But that's part of also why I would never want to go the generator route or the E-Rev route, because I want to be the guy that says, yes, it is great for around town. And I want to be able to speak intelligently to how I can go to Vegas, San Diego, Long Beach, Arizona, the Grand Canyon. I want to be able to say that it is also available for that, but I want to speak intelligently about what the limits are of that, so that if somebody wants to, they can. But if someone's like, no, that's too much for me, that we can have a good conversation. And I come from a place of experience rather than theory, because a lot of these things.
Well, and that's exactly why I'm where I'm at now, because I'm just a little ahead of you. I've done 70,000 miles in a Lightning, most of which is cross country towing, and I've done it all. So I know where the limitations are. And for me, I want to extend the amount I'm on the road before I stop to charge. I'm still going to stop to charge, and this is a good segue into what
talk about a better route planner.
Yeah. Let's talk about a better route planner. So I'm going to share that screen and what you see when you open a better route planner. So I'm not going to get into all the gory details for everybody who hadn't seen this about how to set it up. There are a few little things when you go into your settings. You're going to want to set up your car, and you can get through that. You're going to want to set up some of your, it's obviously not 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. That's what I was running that's actually what I'll get with a generator, by the way.
And where, let me ask you, where did that 3.8 come from? I had that happen to me when I went to plan something on a better route planner. The first time it defaulted to 3.8, and it was skipping a charger. And
if you click on this, when you first set up a car, it's going to check it. Now, if this blue box is highlighted, it will pull that from the truck. So if you've been getting 3.8 in the truck, it'll pull it from the truck.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Because when I drive from my house to my work and back, it's a lot of surface streets. It's rush hour traffic. I'm getting huge numbers when I'm driving it that way.
Which is why I love a better route planner, because like we can go in here and say, okay, we're just going to say on this trip, we're going to get 2.0, and you just change it. And then you're good. You don't have to worry.
Do I need to uncheck that blue that if I uncheck
it won't check if you don't have it connected. You can't connect it unless it's actually live connected. So even if I click this box right now, it'll go to that, but nothing's going to happen. I mean, other than so I just turn it off. See, it's the default on Lightning is 2.23. That's the average if they have to pick a number, that's a pretty good average number to pick. My problem with that number is a better route planner typically is for on the highway. So you need to know what your truck gets kind of before you do this.
Right.
Or connect it live with a better route planner. And we'll get to that here in a second. But for practical purposes, in the summer, in average conditions, you're going to get 2.0 running the speed limit. So you go down here, you can click on your chargers and network. And I always do the avoid and prefer, and it pops up. For me, and I've even got something selected wrong here because it's giving me this little warning, but I do there's 2 thumbs up, 1 thumbs up, a thumb down, or avoid on each one of these selections. That's what I love about a better route planner. So I do 2 thumbs up on Tesla and 1 thumb up on Electrify America, which means Tesla first, then take me to Electrify America, and then whatever else. And I actually have one here that I've actually searched and avoided because I've been to this charger and I hate it. Shout out to you guys in Oxford, Mississippi. I hate that parking garage. I'll never go there again. So I have that one in there as an avoid, but you click that and then you go down. There's a couple more settings you need to check. So that this right here is a big one, this battery. Set it to I keep mine destination at 10%, but you could bump that to 40 or 50 if you got to get back to the charger. I always do 5% charger arrival unless while I'm route planning, it's not quite getting me where I think I should go. 80% is a really good charger max state of charge to start route planning with. And then you can bump that up as you find that maybe the route it's trying to tell you to go on is not where you want. So I usually start at 80. Charging overhead, that's just how much time it's going to add to the trip for time planning for your overhead. If you're one of those guys that don't care about time planning, then that won't matter. And then speed. Again, it can do your reference speed off of the live data. That's what those 2 blue buttons are. And then you've got your maximum speed. I usually set it to 70 or 72. You can click the adjust speed button, and when it route plans, it'll tell you your maximum speed that you can go on this leg to still make it based on the inputs that you've given the truck, like up here of your mile per kilowatt hour and the percentage of your battery. So if we go in there, I'm going to do a saved plan. So we're going to go out to California to our niece's wedding. I've already went in and set all these up. So as you see, there's a whole lot of stops. And I went in every single one of these and tweaked those to show how much am I leaving with? What day and time am I leaving? If you're doing a multiple day trip, you're going to want to run the plan first and then say, okay, I start at 8 a.m. About 10 p.m. I want to be shutting down at a hotel. You can kind of see where that's at on the map and then shut it down. And I will tell you, I've tried this same thing with Google EV planning or just Google Maps. This app is actually better, even for a non-EV route. I use a better route planner now because I like where it kind of tells me how far can I go. I'll just set my efficiency on the truck to 20 miles per kilowatt hour, and then it won't add a charging stop even if you're running a gas vehicle. So this trip is to get to Sonora, California via this route from Southeast Kansas. We're going to stop 7.5 hours of 12 charges on my extended range. And how do I know that this is a good plan? Well, home to the first stop's 190 miles. I can do 220 to 240 pretty easily at 80 miles an hour if I don't have wind. Now, I will tell you that on the first stop, those subsequent stops, you notice how it says 148, 121, 162. That's not nearly the range of the Lightning. That's half the range of the ER Lightning. But
right,
it's keeping you in that 10 to 80% range, which is good because that's going to be the very, very fastest charge you can get. It's always better to drive faster on a trip unless you can skip a charger. But that's the thing. when you first plug in, Chris, you're at 180 kilowatts with your truck. You've seen that before. I'm at 190.
Yeah. 170. Mid 170s is usually where I'm at. I haven't hit 180 yet.
Not 120, right?
Correct. It'll give me a good 10-minute boost, really nice and high. Then it'll settle down, not even to 120 anymore. It stays up a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, it depends on the charger. 130 is what I normally see at that level. But I've seen them like Francis Energy here in Kansas. It'll settle out to 110, 105. They're all different. But this I like to keep it in a boost cycle. So I actually stop more often for less time. So our last trip to Canada, we stopped every hour for like 15 minutes. Just stop and go. But the chargers in Tesla network are right on the interstates, right on. So you're barely wasting any time getting off. If you got to drive 5 or 10 miles off the interstate, it's not worth it. So anyway, you can go in here and set up. So like, for instance, this first stop, you can click on those little dots. Like I've set this charger to set me, okay, I'm going to charge at 150 kilowatts to 80%. Now, why 150? Well, what I kind of looked at the amount, well, I lost it. The amount that I'm getting there with. So if I get to Tulsa with 50% and I'm charging to 80, I'm probably going to average 150 kilowatts over that charging session. Now, if I got there with 10% and I go to 80%, it's not going to average 150. It's probably averaging more like 140, right? 135. If you just divide the amount of kilowatts you received by the time you were there, it'll tell you your average station. So like, for instance, this Oklahoma City one, I've got it at 152 because we're arriving with 25%. So that may be a little high, but it's not, I don't know why it keeps doing that. But anyway, when you're using a better route planner and you tie it to the truck, which we can go in and look at that, that will give you the ability to, I think you go in here, live data. So if you tie this live data to your OBD2, you can edit these connections and you can link your OBD2 connection. So pick your one. I use VPeak. There's a bunch of different ones out there. Just pick one, and there's different for securities. Go back and watch our last episode and you'll see that. But
I've been using VPeak too. It's really, really affordable. Yeah. I love how it links to both Car Scanner.
Bucks.
Yeah. It'll link to Car Scanner and to Better Route Planner. It works.
So when you go in here and you look at your live data, it's going to show you vehicle consumption. This is where it really gets it. So this vehicle consumption will link your truck to the app. So if you're getting 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour, it will live adjust this trip as you, like if I hit drive right now, this is actually bringing up the Benai's version, not the Android Auto version. So this is what you see in Benai's if you have one of those CarPlay boxes, and it doesn't have to be Benai's. It could be Autobox, Magic Box, whatever.
And it is weird to me. Why does it? So a Better Route Planner, to your point, in Benai's or one of those, it shows you more information. It shows you this cool little menu.
That's an Android Auto thing because any app, some apps aren't even available in Android Auto, but when they are, they don't want you clicking buttons on the screen. They want you driving. It's a safer way to do that, but
it shows all that.
That's why it's all limited.
Yeah, it shows it on the screen and gives you all of the battery data and your elevation and your.
They could have added more.
I wish they would.
Do that. When you do that with Android Auto, you get nothing. It sucks. Yep. You can't change. You have to pick up your phone to make any changes. And to me, it's more dangerous to pick up my phone and start messing with it than just to let the app on the screen do it for me before I leave. And I'll be able to see what I'm looking at. So like this particular trip, every one of these is something. Like if you click on them, like this is a charging station. This I think is another stop. It's just a hotel. I think it says H for hotel. So all these are there, but you notice down here it says calibrated reference. You're looking at 2 miles per kilowatt hour, and that'll change as it changes live. And like I even go in so much to when I'm driving, if I all of a sudden turn north into a headwind, I'll reset reference calibration and it will instantly start readjusting that. So that's kind of a good thing. I really enjoy that part of that software. But
like that's the thing where each one has these attributes that I really love. I really love this. I really love this. I really love this. And then each one has a deficiency but you can't do this, or that's not available, or it won't do that. And it's like, can we all just get everybody in a room and just get a product that
right.
does all this together.
But so my favorite one for traveling with a trailer is probably a better route planner on the Benise box, just because it is the only one that really stays fairly accurate on my guessometer. But at the end of the day, when you become experienced with your Lightning, you know how far you're going to go. Like if you look at this screen, 148 miles, 121 miles, 162 miles, I just know my truck's going to do that. So I don't really worry about it. And then I can roll back over to Google Routes and just know that I'm going to stop here, and I'll go in even on Google Routing and I'll tell it to stop, even though it doesn't want to, because it's not recognizing that trailer efficiency. So if you're pulling a trailer or you're hitting cold or you're hitting headwinds, you're going to struggle with the factory navigation or Google EV routing or CarPlay.
You're telling me the Ford factory navigation isn't adjusting for you? I find that it usually does, but you're telling me no. I haven't towed, but when you're towing, it's not.
The truck will, if you tell it you're pulling a trailer.
Okay.
I'm saying. Let me back up and correct my statement. If you're in the wind or you're in the in the cold, it doesn't do a very good job. I've not had any good luck with it. It will overshoot every time.
But as you're driving, it's updating your miles per kilowatt hour. It's showing that you're at a 1.2 or 1.5.
Like, at 80% charge, it's still going to show 195 miles of range, and I know I've got 140 miles of range by doing the manual efficiency calculations. So
yeah,
I mean, the GOM, if I could change one thing about my truck, it would not be the range right now. It would not be. I mean, let me back up. One thing that would be easy to change: take the range estimator. We call it the GOM, the guessometer. I want the efficiency times the battery kilowatts remaining for an average over the last, either give me an option, 5, 10, 15 minutes, because then it's going to be accurate. If I've been driving around town for the last 5 minutes getting 3.4, my range right then should be a lot more. But if I get out on the highway over the last 5 or 10 or 15 minutes getting 1.7, it needs to adjust quickly, and it won't do that. Now, if you have used the factory Ford navigation, your truck GOM is going to show 320 until you plug in a trip, and then it's going to instantly drop because it's trying to use all these external factors to tell you how much your range is going to be. And I'm telling you right now, they're wrong. I've done it 70,000 miles. It is not anywhere close to accurate because it just can't. The only thing that matters is the efficiency. The only thing that, Chris, on your trip, you got to watch that efficiency and take it times the kilowatts remaining. And for your truck, it's simple.
It is simple. At least it's simple. I pretty much, like you said, I do the cowboy math at 100 kilowatt hours, even though it's a little bit less.
A little bit less, just look at, that's a buffer.
Yeah. And
I try to plan that debt. With you having, if you can put on your Apple CarPlay, your kilowatts remaining, you don't even have to do the battery calculation of percent. You can just say 100 times whatever that number is, and that's my range. If you're getting 1.5, that's 150. You know?
Yeah, and I just look at that, and then on the rare occasion that I feel a little bit worried, I'll just I just slow it down a little bit. If I'm going, I think, my base might be, if I'm on I-5, might be like 72, 74, somewhere in there. And if I need to go down to like get behind a semi truck, I'll just trailer a semi truck until I see that number get to where I need to be, and then I'll pop back out and finish off.
You know what? Another little tip that I do when I'm driving my truck, we have our efficiency screen up. It's the My Trip or This Trip.
Yep.
There's also trip 1 and trip 2. So I always like to run trip 1 as the whole trip, just so I know what I ran. But I'll use trip 2 and I'll reset that thing. Sometimes on a trip like this that I'm showing on the screen right now, I'll reset that thing 20 times.
I'll do the same thing.
If I'm headed up a hill, like, okay, and I'll just reset it, and then it'll over the next 5 or 10 minutes, it'll average itself back out maybe to a lot lower. Even though the My Trip still stayed at, say, 1.8 on a long trip, if I head up a hill, it might be 1.4. Because if you run up a hill for 20 miles at 1.4, guess what? It's not accurate on the GOM. It needs to be that last 5 minutes. I'm telling you, I don't know why they can't handle that, but it's such a struggle because I have to I just don't even pay attention to that number on the screen. Don't even pay attention to it. Just do it in your head. or ask Alexa. Honestly, Alexa is my friend in the truck because I say, hey, Alexa, what's 131 times 0.8 times whatever my efficiency is, 1.5. And she'll tell me, and I'll go, okay, that's my range.
So yeah, see, and it's I just want to get to the point where I can turn my mind off. I kind of like and enjoy some of these route planning exercises ahead of time.
I do too.
It's kind of fun.
It gets wearing. A trip like this, and so I want to show, you can see this trip, it's out to Sonora, and then we're going to have the same thing home. So this trip, I'm going to have 24 charges, right?
Yep.
And that there's so much calculation and so much bullshit that's going on this trip. I can't, my wife and I and our 2 dogs, I want to focus this trip. This trip for us, the one we're taking, is not about Martin rebuilds. It's not about anything, but we're going to a wedding. We're going to go see my wife's hometown. I've never been to Northern California. I've only been to Bakersfield, and I don't think that's the shining example of California. So and no disrespect if you live in Bakersfield, but you don't have grass unless you're watering it. But we're going to I want this to be about our family. And I think most folks, they don't want to have to fight their trucks. So if I show this same trip, just for example, it's this exact same trip. I called this one Cali with the Gen Set. So we're going to see this trip cut like from 7.5 hours of charging down to like 2. And this is the reason. Now, obviously, I'm only stopping here. I got, if I drove all the way up, there'd be a little bit more range here, a little bit more stops. But don't pay attention to the 9 hours and 33 minutes of charging that it says here, because there's a hotel in here. This 7.5 hours of hotel. So if you cut that one out, that's still just that's no charging. So you've got 42 minutes, 33 minutes, 31 minutes, and I'm there. That's what it's going to look like with the charger or with the Gen Set. So that's another thing about route planning. If you have a longer range on the highway truck, you don't have to fight route planning.
Now, with this route, let me ask you, you've got this set where it's going, a day or day and a half or whatever. I've been doing mine separately. So like I have a plan that takes me from the Bay Area to Quartzsite, which is going to be 1 day, Quartzsite to Glendale, Arizona, where we're staying for the holiday. And then going from Glendale up to Grand Canyon. If you do the whole thing, when you get in and out of your truck, can you bring it up and it resumes from where you are the rest of the route plan?
Not as good as Google EV routing. What I normally do is just kind of pick those off as I go and just hit X. So if we go back to restart, I'll like hit X on this one and X on this one as I go. But it's one click of a button, and then you're rerouting it from there. It's not ideal, but it is very workable. I mentioned a minute ago, EV routing doesn't really work for trailering. It doesn't account for that. Like I've pulled trailers with Google EV routing, and it says I got 250 miles of range when I start, when I really got only 150. It like, if you look at it on a scale, so when you start the trip, there's this big, huge deficiency between what you actually have and what you got. And as the battery gets down, those get closer and closer and closer together. So when you get down to like 15, 20%, it starts getting really, really accurate. But the delta between the two, like from the start of the trip on a tow trailer trip is like this, and on non-tow, it's like this. So they're pretty accurate. I mean, your GOM is pretty accurate. Hook a trailer onto it and don't tell it has a trailer hooked on. It doesn't know what to do. It freaks out. And so that's with a better route planner, or with the other one, I don't have that problem.
Are you looking forward? Are you looking forward to taking a trip without trailering? Because most of your big trips have been trailering something, and this should be a bit of
just running the Lightning without the trailer is a 3.5 hour stop. So it's wonderful. I want to be able to stop at 3.5 hours now and not have to charge. Get out 15 minutes. And it's going to, if those of you who have road tripped a Lightning, I don't know, I think Josh and Sergio both had mentioned it's around the human body at that point. It's not really around the truck.
Yeah, I can't go that long anyway.
But like when I don't, what frustrates me is my mind. Maybe it's the way my engineering mind works is, if I'm going to stop, we need to be charging somewhere. I'm not pulling in just to let you pee. If we have to pull in and pee and we're not charging, I'm like irritated.
Yeah. And having the road trip when I'm usually with the family, we've got stops, whether it's me or my wife or the kids or whatever it is, those stops are fine. I mean, I wish I had the extended range for those types of things. That little bit of extra would certainly be nice. I could feel more comfortable charging to only 80% instead of 90, and that would speed things up. Certainly, I could probably skip a stop here or there, but for the most part, it hasn't been an issue. We'll see on this trip. This trip will be much, much further.
Oh, this is a huge one for you. I think this will be your biggest one, most stops. I think you're going to find by the time you get there, you're like, good Lord, are we ever going to get there without all these stops? So that's why I would love to have a situation where you could go rent for a couple $100 a generator and throw it in the bed and just drive until you want to stop, and then and then when you get home, you take it back to the rental place and you're done. You just go back to the regular Lightning that you love.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it.
I know you're not. I know you're not. But with it. I think there's a lot of guys out there who will, because they want to be able to take their Lightning on the road trip, but their wife's not going to deal with that. You know, my wife would absolutely deal with a trip like we're seeing here.
God bless my wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very patient.
But but there's some of the wives out there, when you take this screen that has 4 stops in it and you put 3 in between each one, no, they're going to take their Yukon or their Navigator or minivan. I mean, they're not going to take the Lightning on trips like this. So I think that's where the Ram Charger is going to come in immediately. And then I'm hoping Ford follows suit and maybe we can prove out this genset situation where that might help some of the guys that are out there now that don't either are towing or they want to take long cross-country trips, but they really need a gas to do it. That's what I feel like I'm giving you a gas, but you still have your electric truck for the rest of the year. You don't have to go buy a second vehicle.
So how confident are you that when you come out here in June, you think you're going to have this generator thing working and you think you're going to try it, or you're not sure?
Confidence it builds as time goes on. I'm about 75% confident right now that we're going to have it going. What I'm not confident, to be transparent with everybody, I'm not confident I'm going to have the $6,000 extra to put in the generator that I want to put in by then. The 20 kilowatt generator, it's 19 kilowatt continuous, will double the range of the Lightning. It will take it 550 or 560 miles.
You know what you do, man, is you find out what generator you want and you write to that company and you tell them what your plan is and you give them a copy of the website and you say, hey, I'd love for this to be a video that you sponsor. Here's my plan. What do you think about partnering on this? And this is the model I'd like to try.
Oh, I already know, Chris.
See if
this is it right here, buddy. This is the one I want. This is the Winco. It is a 240 single phase. This will slide right into the bed of the truck. These rails, I'll make a custom fab where these just strap down to the floor. This is the one I really want, but this is you see the MSRP is $6,500 and you can buy these for a little under that. This is from their website. But I have a lot of friends with a 55, 65, 7,500 kilowatt generator. I can probably even pick up one of those Harbor Freight Predators that'll do 7,500 continuous. You can do that one you can buy those for $1,000. I've seen them used for that because a lot of people don't use their generator that much. Think, we're going to sell it, and you can still use it at home. But 7,500 kilowatt continuous is 7.5 kilowatts. So if you look at the truck consuming 30 on the highway, and I'm putting 7.5 back in, that's going to get me to maybe 300 miles on the highway, which is better at 100% range. So I will have a generator more than likely in that truck of some level. I don't know if it'll be this one I want because I've got, like everybody else, we have a budget and a life and a lot of toys and a lot of things. We're buying Ford Ranger EVs and so but I think for guys, this is going to be a big deal and moving forward, I will do less route planning if I have the generator than I ever have. That's kind of the reason I want to do this for 2 sides. It's changing the dynamic of the trip. And it also proves out the concept that an EREV is going to be the future for a little while until battery tech gets and infrastructure is built out.
Well, we'll have to catch up and see how Jace went because I think Jace is testing the Better Route Planner. And then I'll have the opportunity, like I said, in April that I think I'm going to go with a Better Route Planner, barring any kind of awesome updates to
Have you
Apple
run it
Maps.
locally yet?
Yeah, in fact, that's what I've been doing. I've been driving with a Better Route Planner just to try to get used to it. And I think there is still a test that I want to do, kind of like what I did with my tonneau cover. I want to do a test testing whether or not one pedal versus sport mode that doesn't use. So
I've tested all those. I want you to do it.
Yeah,
it's not going to make any difference. Now, I will say, can you make changes on the fly in CarPlay, a better route planner?
No, I can't. In fact, none of the apps. So Apple Maps, or when I was using my old phone for Google, I couldn't make it on the fly.
Google EV routing will. You just can't touch the screen. You have to physically tell it to replace a stop.
With voice command. Okay, yeah. So that's maybe I'll experiment with that again. And I was trying to touch the screen. If you can
get your hands, I honestly think for your upcoming trip, if you could get your hands on an Android phone, a buddy who's got one, and you use Google EV routing in that truck, you'll be impressed, because you've not gotten to play with that, have you?
No, not. I tried it a little bit with my older phone. I don't know if there's somebody chime in the comments. Maybe I need to reach out to some people that know cell phones. Like, what is the cheapest? Like,
I can tell you the cheapest one, Chris. I'll just send you this one. It's one of my old ones. I got like 5 of them, and it works perfect for that. And you can use it on the trip.
I mean, because I've got an old one, but it bogs down. It over processes. Like, the processing power is.
So I think you could get your hands on.
I've got a Pixel. I've got like a Pixel.
Buy like a Samsung S21. That'll still work.
Okay.
It has to be running on the Android. I think it has to be running on Android 14. So you might Google a little bit what's Android 14. I could be wrong there, but if you run on Android 14, then you'll be in good shape. But seriously, I have like 5 extra phones laying here. I could mail you one, and you could report back to all of us and say, here's CarPlay versus Google Maps on either, because I think you're going to find that I've run them all. My favorite by far, empty, is Google EV routing. It's just the most user friendly.
Yeah, that may be something I'll have to consider then, is to look at that, because it's no difference if I'm running a Benai's box, which is essentially a box plugged in, or if I'm running some cell phone.
But you mentioned earlier, it has its problems. You know why I don't do that? Because it does glitch out every so often. They all do.
They all do.
Magic Box, I've seen them, but it's got so much information on the screen, like we were showing. It's kind of hard to touch those little boxes. You almost got to pull over so you don't crash the truck to touch the boxes.
Yeah, I did the Benai's box when I did my trip down to San Diego and did Legoland at Disneyland, because I really wanted the data at every stop. And it was too cumbersome to switch between a better route planner on Apple CarPlay and the what's it called, the car scanner.
Right.
If I did the Benai's box, it gave me the best of both. It gave me the data from Car Scanner, and it gave me the better route planner. And I made it all the way down to Rove charging using that. And then it crashed. And then it crashed on me. And then by that time I was like, cool, I know where Legoland is from here. It's not a big deal.
But you can just plug it back in. I mean, I think they all tend to do that. I like it. I plug it back in, just unplug it, plug it back in. It reloads everything. But yeah, that's what I think you should try it. So, this is interesting. Perfect example we were talking about earlier. Everything outdoors in Jeeps. He picked up. He's got his flash, which means it's going to be
extended range.
Extended range. Yep. He said 300 miles tomorrow. Well, I need a little bit of information to be able to give you. So, what's your temperature where you live? What's the wind going to be? What's your elevation change going to be? And what phone do you have? Because if you're just going to run the truck and you're not going to try to run Google Maps or Apple CarPlay, the factory navigation.
Are you going to a Tesla charger, or are you going to use what the native nav says, which is going to be an EA or?
Because he's got a 320-mile truck, though, right? He should be able to make this. No.
Yeah, no. Because when you're
here's the bottom line. No matter what app you decide to use, to get 300 miles out of your truck, the efficiency needs to say 2.45 miles per kilowatt hour. And most likely you're going to see somewhere he's in Northern Virginia to Birmingham, New York.
And how fast? What kind of driver are you? Are you
so
at 70 miles? Or are you
that trip? Yeah, I suspect it's still a little bit cold there.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to get 1.6 to 1.8 miles per kilowatt hour, somewhere in that range, which means your actual range from the first charge is going to be about 200, and then 160 to 170 after that. So you'll have to charge once on this trip, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I think you'd end up doing, is you pick a midpoint, or you pick whatever your when I'm in those kind of scenarios, I try to look at whatever the accommodations are around the amenities around the charger. And I'm like, this is a charger in an area I'd like to visit anyway. So, looks like he's going 65 to 70. That's a totally reasonable speed.
It's reasonable speed. You're going to get let's just say if it's not too cold, you're going to get about 1.8. Yeah, 1.8 is going to net you about 230 miles of range on the first. So you'll stop, pull in and stop. Navigation, I would run CarPlay or the factory Ford navigation, because he's obviously still got, if he just got his truck, he's going to have the connected navigation, which will route him to everything but Tesla.
Did he say he had Apple?
It's an iPhone. He's running an iPhone. Yeah. Okay. So pick up your CarPlay and connect that to the truck, and that should get you the stops. If you want to stop at Tesla and you have your adapter, then you'll have to manually tell it to go to that Tesla station. If you don't have your adapter, if it has a Magic Dock, you'll be okay. Otherwise, I'd be looking for EVgo or Electrify America.
Yeah, and look for one.
I can
look
tell you
for the 350s
tomorrow. Before you go to bed and it's late out there where you're at, it's almost 10 o'clock. I would jump on PlugShare and look at the route, plugshare.com, look at the route and make sure the charger's there and check and see if they're working. Because there'll be reviews recently from people that said, hey, this charger sucks, don't stop here, or worked fine. So
he wants to use the factory Ford.
Factory Ford's not going to take you to any Tesla stations. And the GOM is probably going to be off. So do your calculation manually. So if you're getting 1.8 at 131 kilowatt hours at 100%, that's going to be 230 miles. But as you drive, the GOM is going to tell you one thing. And if you do the manual calculation, it's going to tell you something else. So he does have an adapter, but you're not going to be able to use that adapter to navigate automatically in the factory nav to a Tesla station.
Right.
They're not loaded yet. They're coming, but they're not loaded yet. So go check out my video that we talked about a little bit earlier on Martin Rebuild's YouTube channel. There's a how to program Tesla stops in the factory navigation. It might make you pull your hair out. It's a little cumbersome, but it does work.
Yeah, the only drawback I think though is it depends on the weather. If you're going to be driving in weather that's below 40 degrees, if you're going to be in the 30s, the 20s, or anything like that, then sticking with the factory navigation is important, because it's going to be what preconditions your battery, and preconditioning and keeping it warm is important for this. So yeah, and hey, thank you, man. Thank you for checking out the videos. We love the Lightning. I think we would love to have you comment back. Do your trip, come back, leave us a comment, because I would love to see next week how it went.
Come back on, tell us how it went with the factory Ford navigation, because we're going to talk a better route planner with Jace, our other guy that's doing a better route planner this week with the factory navigation, or with the integrated CarPlay.
That would be cool.
Yeah, come back next week and tell us. We'd like to know.
It'd be great to hear from you and see how that went for you. I would guess though the weird thing is that you're just gonna have to charge once. You can almost just pick any old place that you think looks good, that has a good PlugShare score. Yeah, awesome, man. And then you'll stop midway.
And honestly, we've talked a lot about a lot of crap. Just enjoy the truck, because it's the most comfortable road trip vehicle I've ever been in, and I've owned hundreds of cars owned in a body shop over the last 30 years. So
such a great road trip vehicle.
Find that it is very comfortable. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's I got to tell you, and that's the thing. We can throw, when we go to do our road trip, just like we did down to Legoland and Disneyland, we'll throw all of our luggage in the front. We'll throw the stuff that we need to get quickly will be in the front, I should say. The rest of the luggage that's our bigger stuff will go into the back, and it's just going to have so much room for the kids and so comfortable to drive that it just makes it fun. Yeah, you're right. It is badass. Love the
Lightning. And it doesn't really matter if you're running. I can tell you that if you feel like you're getting nervous, you're getting a little bit of that range anxiety, slow down. If you slow down, you go a lot further.
I honestly I don't think he is. I think all he's going to have to do is because it is just
plan to stop and know that even if the thing tells you you're going to be, it may tell you that you don't need to stop. I think tonight you plan it. You say, I know I'm going to drive to this destination. I'm going to charge for this much. And then that will make your trip known before you start. Because I can tell you that GOM it's going to lie to you.
And of course, it depends also, do you have a charger to plug into when you get to where you're going? If you don't, you don't want to arrive to your destination with 10%. You want to,
and not be able to get back. That's a good point, Chris. Because if you get to A to B and it says you can make it to A to B, but you got to get halfway back from A to B to that charger. Right. Oh, what do we do now? So yeah, check that.
Yep. And that way you can kind of drive to make it there. You may only have to charge here, but instead I might go a little bit further, and that gives me the thing to get
back. If it tells you need to charge, because the truck will actually tell you what to charge to. It'll tell you that you can continue your trip at 82% or 59%, but it doesn't know that you're coming back. So if you go plan the trip and say your destination is actually home where you started, and then put a midpoint at then it can calculate it. It'll know.
Yeah,
so that's another good thing.
I love this stuff. I love seeing how the planning goes. Long time ago in the early 2000s, I used to be a Cessna pilot, and it brings me back. I don't fly anymore. It's too expensive with a family. It just costs way too much now. But I used to love breaking out my map, doing my calculations, my weight and balance, my wind, my elevation changes. It was so similar. And thank you for tuning in, listening, and commenting. It makes it a lot of fun when we get comments, man. Love that. It's so similar to planning for a flight. Where do I have to stop to refuel? What's the elevation change going to be? What's my wind speed? What's my temperatures? What's my weight and balance? All of this stuff matters.
You're going to have those guys like us. I'm the same way, Chris. I love it. I look forward to planning in a better route planner and getting things lined out and having my trip like I want it. Then there's the other half of us that just want to get in their truck and drive.
Right. Yeah. There's a time and place for both, for sure.
Yeah, and that's what's you can't just get in your truck and drive 1,200 miles in a Lightning without planning. If you do, you're going to end up like that guy in Canada that said his truck left him stranded.
Right. Yeah.
You remember that video from years ago?
Yeah. Which is sucks, man.
So anyway, we've been 2 hours.
I think it's time to wrap up, but join us again next week because we are going to hear from Everything Outdoors and Jeeps. We're going to hear about his travel and how that went for him. We're going to hear from Jace. That's going to be exciting to hear how his road trip went and his better route planner. I love that stuff. I want to hear about it. It's going to help me prepare.
Yep. I think it'd be good. And then we'll have some more content. We may even have another special guest next week. So to stay tuned for the heads up on that.
Good stuff. And it's great to have all you guys join us. We have 52 folks with us live right now. It's chime in with those in the comments too. We always start off a little bit slow, kind of in the teens and then the 20s. And then by the end of the show, we got 50 folks joining us. Should we be starting? I mean, easier for me to say start later because it's only 7 o'clock out here in California, much later for you and Jace. So that might not be practical. But
Jace is tough. He's at 10 p.m. right now, but for me, it's 9. I stay up this late anyway. I would like to hear if you guys chime in next week or you want to hear or send us, get on our Facebook page, leave comments, whatever. I'd like to hear suggestions on what you want us to go over. What you'd like to hear about, because Tech Charged, just before we wrap up here, we're about done. Tech Charged wants to be about things technical. You wrap your head around it, sink your teeth into it, whether it's, at some point we'll venture into lawnmowers and anything electric, right? So battery powered, whatever. And we focus a lot on the Lightning and EVs because we're passionate about those, but we'd like to have some feedback. Let us know what you guys want to hear as far as topics. Like, hey, I'd really like to know why the Lightning, whatever. Just let us know. We'd like to hear it. So
yeah, we'd love to do that. So it's great when you see an audience of 50 something people that are live with you. And we want to get to the most people. We want to bring the most entertainment for the time. And we love the interaction too. So when we get people chiming in with questions and comments, it makes it more fun for everybody, I think. So this has been a blast. I love this.
Sounds good. There we go. Hey, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
Something I've been working on. If I get this XLT, I may have to do that because I'm not sure it has the integrated controller. So stay tuned. All right. Sounds good. We're going to sign off. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you all next week on another episode of Tech Charged.
See you next time.